All right, good afternoon, everyone. This feels like there's an echo. I don't know if you guys want to hear me twice. I don't know if they're fixing it or not. Okay, let's get going. I know, it does. Okay, today the Biden-Harris administration is taking a major step to expand contraception coverage under the Affordable Care Act. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, Republican elected officials have made clear they want to ban or restrict birth control, defund federal programs that help women access contraception, and repeal the ACA. Congressional Republicans have also repeatedly blocked federal legislation to safeguard the fundamental right to birth control for women in every state. It's dangerous and it's unacceptable. This new action under our administration would help ensure that millions of women with private health insurance can access the contraception they need, including over-the-counter contraception at no cost. At a time when contraception access is under attack, President Biden and Vice President Harris will continue to fight to protect access to reproductive health care and call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade into federal law. Now, the President and the Vice President their response to the recovery efforts continue to deliver for the people of North Carolina, Florida, and all communities affected by Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Over 5,500 federal personnel are deployed to North Carolina and Florida. Today, Administrator Deanne Criswell is in North Carolina to ensure that resources continue to make it to the communities and survivors who need them. In total, nearly $2 billion in federal assistance has been approved for those affected by recent storms. In North Carolina, the administration has approved more than $300 million in assistance. This includes over $130 million for nearly 90,000 households. Additionally, FEMA has approved more than $189 million for debris removal and reimbursement of emergency protective measures for the state. And the administration also announced that the government will create a brand new program for assistance impact communities with their recovery and rebuilding efforts. Additionally, 15 disaster recovery centers are operating in impacted areas in North Carolina and have served more than 5,700 visitors, and power has been restored to 99% of impacted North Carolina customers due to thousands of utility personnel working around the clock. All of this is thanks to the leadership of the President, the Vice President, FEMA, and other administration leaders, and the many state and local officials who have helped ensure a robust and well-coordinated response and recovery effort. We'll continue to use every tool at our disposal to help these communities respond and recover from these disasters. And now, next, we have the First Lady. First Lady Jill Biden is unveiling a new enhanced educational White House public tour for visitors today at the White House. As a classroom teacher for 40 years, Dr. Biden knows that learning has to be engaging and interactive, and that you have to meet students where they are, giving them what they need to spark their curiosity and imagination. This is the first significant improvement to the tour in decades. And as the First Lady said, and I quote, "We've added flexible, versatile, and dynamic tools of learning to the tour, created more pathways in the house to bring people further into the rooms, expanded the tour to now include the diplomatic reception room, and we've included more educational content that visitors can touch, hear, and see up close." Get on that tour, folks. The First Lady hopes the tour inspires everyone who visits the White House to learn more about our shared history. And on the week ahead, the President will be hitting the road this week to discuss the Biden-Harris administration's work to deliver for the American people. On Tuesday, tomorrow, the President will host a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Robert Golub of the Republic of Slovenia before heading to Concord, New Hampshire, where he will join Senator Bernie Sanders to discuss the Biden-Harris administration's work to lower costs of prescription drugs. During that event, the president is expected to discuss new data on savings for the first year thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. He will also make a campaign-related stop while he is in the Granite State. Then the president will travel to Phoenix, Arizona on Thursday and Friday, where he will deliver remarks at the Gila River Indian community and discuss the Biden-Harris administration's record of delivering for tribal communities, including keeping his promise to make this historic visit to Indian country as well. This will be first as president to do this, his first as president to do this. As always, we will be sharing more information as we get closer, certainly to Arizona and tomorrow as well. Okay, Darlene. And
thank you. Apologies, can you clarify one thing? You just said the president, after you were talking about New Hampshire, that he's making a campaign-related stop. Is that in New Hampshire, or were you talking about
That's going to be in
Arizona?
New Hampshire. Yep, the Granite State. He'll be making a campaign-related stop, and certainly the campaign will have more to share on that.
And then on the leak of information, classified information about Israel's plans toward Iran, there was a leak of classified information last year in April. A member of the National Guard had posted a bunch of documents and whatnot online. Has the Pentagon and the intelligence community done enough since then to protect?
What I can say is certainly we are aware of the reporting. Certainly we are concerned, very concerned by them. Anything about the process and this and how it's being investigated by the U.S. government, I would have to refer you to the IC, the DOJ, and certainly DOD. I'm not going to get into particulars or specifics from here, but we are aware of the reports and we are definitely very concerned about them.
Can you speak to any changes the president might have in mind that he might want to see going forward?
So I'm not going to get ahead of it. As I just mentioned, the U.S. government is investigating this and through the appropriate authorities. So I'm going to let them move through their process, see exactly what happened. I'm not going to get into it from here.
And speaking of classified information, what is the president's plan for voting in the November 5th election?
So the president certainly looks forward. Oh, so serious. I'm sorry. I'm so serious today. Very funny, Darlene. Very good joke. So the president is certainly looking forward to casting his ballot in the upcoming election. When we have more to share about what that looks like, where he's going to be, we certainly will share that. Go ahead, Risha.
Karine. So we just heard from Kirby that the White House is monitoring the progress of the investigative effort to figure out how this happened, not whether this happened. But just for the sake of clarity, can you confirm that the documents in question are authentic and do in fact include U.S. classified intelligence?
Look, I appreciate the question. Like I said, we're certainly aware of the reports. We are very concerned. I'm not going to get into specifics. I'm not going to get into details. That's something for DOJ, IC, and DOD to get into it, and certainly they can hopefully answer any questions that you may have on this particular matter. But look, as the reports are out there and what we are hearing, certainly we are very concerned by them. They're being looked into. It's being investigated by the appropriate authorities, obviously the U.S. government here, and so I'm going to let them speak to it directly.
Kirby characterized the concern as stemming from the fact that they were in the public domain. So,
well, it's true.
As he talked about it, the implication was that this was classified information. I'm just asking yes or no, was it?
Look, anytime there are leaks like these that end up in the public domain, just reiterating what he said, of course it is concerning. We have the appropriate authorities who are looking into this on our side of things, and I'm going to be really mindful. I'm not going to get into specifics. Was this, classified? Was this not classified? I can't get into that from here. That is something IC and DOD and DOJ can get into it on those specifics. But anytime we see any type of classified information that is leaked and that is out there in the public domain, of course we are concerned, of course. But they can speak to their how authentic, how real, any of those pieces, they can speak to that. I'm not going to speak to that from here.
And then just a quick follow-up on Darlene. I know you're figuring out his election day plans, but given the potential for political unrest in the days that follow, will the president be here? Does he plan to be here in Washington in the days that follow the election?
So, look, the president is president wherever he is. Obviously the number one priority of this president is the American people. Obviously the security of the American people is also a priority of his as well. I don't want to get ahead of where he's going to be, if he's going to be here or not. We'll have more to share as we get closer, certainly to November 5th and what his schedule will look like. But he is indeed president wherever he is. And so his number one priority is the American people.
Thank you.
Get Selena.
Thanks, Corinne. Elon Musk is pledging to give away $1 million every day up until the election to voters in battleground states. Some experts are saying this is clearly illegal vote buying. Does the White House believe what he's doing is illegal?
So I'm going to have to refer you to the FEC. I'm not going to comment from here.
Can you talk about how the president's reacting to this in terms of, does he believe it's appropriate? Does he agree with what Governor Shapiro is saying about how this needs to be investigated?
I will leave it to Governor Shapiro and the legal authorities to speak to this. I'm just not going to speak to it from here. I would have to leave it to FEC.
And if you could just talk broadly about what Trump has also said about making Musk the head of a new government efficiency commission. Does the White House see that as a conflict of interest, given the fact that Musk's companies have so many contracts with government agencies, and it could potentially give him the power to regulate the agencies that hold sway over his own companies?
Well, since that's a campaign-related item there, what they're planning to do next, or what it looks like under, and their platform for his campaign, I'm just not going to respond to it from here.
Any reaction from the president or White House about Elon Musk's role at this moment in the political discussion?
I have no response, no comment on that at this moment. Go ahead, Monica.
On the apparent leak of classified information, how concerned is the president about the message it sends to allies about the way the U.S. handles some of the most sensitive top secret information?
Well, what I can say is we take this very seriously, and as I've said many times already, we're very concerned. This is why the DOD, this is why IC, this is why DOJ are all looking into this, and so I would have to refer you to them. And as I stated many times, it's being investigated. We need to get to the bottom of it. We need to get answers before I can give you anything further from here. But it's being investigated by the appropriate authorities. We're looking into it. Are we concerned? Yes. Are we very concerned? Yes, we're very concerned. And so the appropriate authorities are looking into this.
And you just mentioned the president's going to be making a campaign-related stop tomorrow in New Hampshire. He has so far only campaigned alongside Vice President Harris in an official campaign event capacity once. We have reporting that we don't expect to see the two of them together in these final 2 weeks. What is the reason for that?
Well, I would remind folks that he was in Philadelphia just last week doing a campaign event just last week on his own. And so would remind folks that he was doing that. There's going to be a campaign-related event, as I just mentioned, tomorrow, and there'll be more to come. I think there will be more to come. We cannot forget what we have seen this past couple of weeks. 2 historic hurricanes, right? Let's not forget that. The president was able to, because of his leadership and what his administration was able to do, we avoided a port strike, right? That's something that he was able to do. And there are just many other, obviously, pressing issues that are not just here domestically, but around the world. And the president has led on those issues. And so the most important thing that the president believes that his job is to continue to be there for the American people, deliver for the American people, and that's what you have seen him do. Now, he's going to be out there. I would say stay tuned. There's more to come. I just mentioned New Hampshire. There's more to come in the upcoming days, and we'll certainly share that with all of you.
Finally, former President Trump is in North Carolina today. He was talking about some of the FEMA efforts there. He called the rescue effort, quote, non-existent. He repeated some misleading information about where some of the funds have been directed to. So how concerned is the White House still about what that might do to not just people taking in this information, again, that's misleading, but to voters specifically in key states where the devastation of the hurricanes has been evident?
Well, I'm glad in your question you said misleading information, which is true. Misleading information that is being put out there. And it's not just from us. You've heard from Republicans and Democrats, right, in North Carolina, who have said, who have made it very clear, by pushing these types of conspiracy theories, they are dangerous, they are unhelpful, and it is not what leadership looks like. I'll say it there like that. And it is a time when you see something like that, these types of hurricanes that have impacted communities the way that they have, both of them, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. It's time that you bring a community together and stand by each other. And so you've heard from, again, the governors of all of these states. Well, in particular, certainly as we're talking about governor in North Carolina, he spoke to this today, and he said the Biden-Harris administration has responded quickly and positively to our request. The federal government has been responsive to our call for help. That's coming from the governor of North Carolina. We also heard from the mayor of Asheville as well. And so we have seen a bipartisan reaction to this, appreciation for what this administration has been able to do. And the reason we've been able to do this work on the ground is because we've had a good partnership with local and state officials on the ground. And this type of conspiracy theory that's out there, it is dangerous. To your point in your question, it's dangerous, it's unhelpful, and it gets in the way. Again.
Secretary Blinken is headed back to the Middle East today. Does the White House have any hope that this trip will be more successful than past trips, given that this comes after the death of Sinwar?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I know the State Department, my colleagues over at the State Department spoke to this in greater detail about the Secretary's trip, which starts tomorrow. He's going to be going throughout the region. He's going to discuss the importance of ending certainly the war in Gaza, securing the release of all hostages, alleviating the suffering of the Palestinian people, and he's going to underscore the importance of getting that food, medicine, and other humanitarian aid. It's important to get that delivered to civilians in Gaza. And he's going to also continue to have the discussions that we've been having for the past several months now about the diplomatic resolution to the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. And so we're going to reaffirm what you're going to see from this trip that the Secretary is having throughout the region is reaffirming our commitment to what I just laid out to our partners across the region. And we do want to de-escalate the tensions and also obviously provide that lasting stability. And that is the commitment that we continue to have. Look, you're asking me, I know your question was, do we think this will have an effect? We believe, and this president believes, when a diplomatic resolution, a diplomatic conversation is certainly key to dealing with issues that we're seeing across the globe.
Does the president have any reaction to former President Trump using this rhetoric about the enemy from within, and specifically tying it to former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff this weekend?
Look, it is, that type of language is un-American. It's dangerous. I was just asked about misinformation that we have been seeing during certainly before the hurricanes hit, and certainly now as after the impact and what we're seeing on the ground, and how we're trying to work with our partners on the ground to make sure we get relief to folks on the ground. And that type of misinformation, conspiracy theories, is only hurtful. And that is not what Americans want to see as a leader. That is not what they want to see as a leader. And it's also disrespectful to our military. To ask our military to react or to do something in such a political, such a political way, we should respect our men and women. They should be respected. They put their lives on the line for us, and we should respect them. And it's incredibly disrespectful to them as well. And so it's un-American, it's dangerous, and it should stop.
Thank you, Green. Is there any latest understanding from the White House on when Israel is going to respond to Iran's missile attacks?
Look, I think we've been pretty consistent on that. This is something for that decision. Any military operational decision is up to Israel. We've been very clear in our commitment and our commitment to Israel's security. That continues to be ironclad, but that is something for the Israeli government to speak to.
And is there any word on what that response would look like, and is there sort of a red line that the US would
I'm
not
just
look
not
like?
going to preview that from here. Us previewing that from here would certainly give a heads up to the Iranians. It's something that we're not going to be doing. But that is, aside from that, that certainly is something for Israel to speak to. Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. I wanted to ask about the contraception rule that the administration is putting out today. As you mentioned at the top, the president is proposing a rule that would require insurers to cover the cost of over-the-counter contraception. The Congressional Review Act allows lawmakers to overturn federal regulations that are implemented in the final stages of a presidential term. And I'm wondering if the White House believes that this type of rule could withstand that threat, or if you think that anything that happens in these last few months is potentially subject to congressional reversal.
So look, that's getting into a hypothetical that I'm just not going to do from here. Look, it's going through a rulemaking process, as you know, from the moment that the president made this announcement. It's now in a rulemaking process. We'll hear back from the public. We feel pretty confident this is going to move forward. And the reason why, as I stated at the top, why we're doing this is because of the Dobbs decision. It's because now we have women out there who don't have the protections that they need on their own health care because Roe v. Wade, which was law of the land for almost our constitutional right for almost 50 years, were stripped away. And we have made that commitment from this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, to protect women, to do everything that we can. Now we're expanding ACA. Now we're providing this potential opportunity to give the women opportunity to make those difficult decisions and to have also the availability, obviously, of contraception. And so that is our commitment that we have made here. I can't get into what Congress is going to do, the hypotheticals from here. What we can focus on is keeping that commitment that we have made to women and families across the country.
And then tomorrow in New Hampshire, CNN is reporting that President Biden will appear with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders tomorrow. It's an interesting contrast to Vice President Kamala Harris, who today is appearing at a campaign event with Republican Liz Cheney. I'm wondering if you can just talk about the rationale of the presidents to appear with Senator Sanders tomorrow and what message that's meant to send to the party.
So look, I think if you think about the commitment that both of them have had, the president and Senator Sanders, you are correct. He is going to be traveling to the Granite State with Senator Sanders, and they have been partners, right? They have been partners on a lot of these issues, including lowering cost for healthcare. We know that this is an issue that's incredibly important to Senator Sanders. So for us, it makes sense. It makes sense to be doing this event together. They have been partners not just on this, but on other important critical needs of the American people. And this is what you're going to see. I cannot speak for the Vice President's campaign. She's doing what she needs to do. I'm going to let her campaign speak to that. The President is going to continue to go into states and have really important conversation. And let's not forget, the Inflation Reduction Act was incredibly historic in lowering costs in healthcare, was important in one of the most historic pieces of legislation to deal with climate change. There's a lot there that we believe that the American people need to continue to hear from him. And he's going to have Senator Sanders, which he really looks forward to being in the state with him on that issue.
Would you say that it's accurate, as some strategists have argued, that this is an effort by President Biden to embrace the more progressive flank while Vice President Harris tacks to the center in these final days?
What the president is doing is going out there, speaking directly to the American people and talking about how he's delivering for them, how the Biden-Harris is delivering for them, whether it's lowering costs, climate change, powering up an economy, continuing to move that economy forward. That's what you're seeing from this president, and he's not going to shy away from it.
Great, thanks. Zooming out from this breach, which I know that you're not going to discuss the specifics of, but you've had, over the last week, private correspondence between the Secretaries of State and the Pentagon, to Israel, this Air National Guard leak from a year ago on Discord, the investigation into Rob Malley. Is there a problem safeguarding sensitive information?
What I will say is the president continues to have complete confidence in his in the agencies, right? Whether it's DOD, IC, or DOJ, and he has complete confidence in them. This is being looked into, investigation being done by the appropriate parties, and I'm not going to get into it. Are we concerned? We are very concerned. We are. We've been very clear about that. And it's being looked into, and so I'm not going to go beyond that.
Since the Discord leak, has the administration, or what has the administration done to further safeguard national secrets?
I'm not going to get into any specifics on that as it relates to this particular moment of what we're seeing with the reports out there. It's being looked into. We are very concerned. DOD, IC, DOJ can speak to this particular incident more broadly, these reports. I just don't have anything else to share beyond
And
that.
do you know yet if it's a leak or a hack?
Again, this is why I'm referring you to IC, DOD, DOJ. They can speak more to this, and I would leave it to them. Okay, Sarah.
Thanks, Corinne. While the president was in Germany, did the issue of authorizing Ukraine's use of long-range missiles deeper inside Russia come up during his bilateral meetings with the Germans or his meeting with the European Quad, particularly given the approval that some NATO allies have provided? Did they urge him to provide support for this?
I'm not going to get into beyond what we've been able to share on the readouts. What I can say is that policy has not changed. And we said that. We said that I remember saying this at this podium before the president left to go to Berlin, Germany just last week, and said our policy stance on that hasn't changed and it wasn't going to change, and don't expect any announcements. So it still stays the same. I don't have anything to share beyond that, beyond what we've shared in readouts.
And then on a different topic, there's a report that Israel gave the U.S. a document outlining its conditions for a diplomatic solution to end the war in Lebanon and allow people to return to their homes on both sides of the border. Can you confirm this?
What I can say is that many times we get certainly views from the Israeli government. We get their views on things, and certainly the back and forth. I've said many times that we have regular conversation with our counterparts in the Israeli government, but I'm not going to get into diplomatic or private conversations from here. Okay.
So this administration has warned Israel that it could lose access to some U.S. weapon fundings if it doesn't produce a dramatic increase in humanitarian aid coming into Gaza. Have you seen so far any dramatic improvement in the delivering of aid?
So here's what I'll say to that. We are working to surge humanitarian assistance into Gaza. So just a couple of things just to update all of you. Over the weekend, we welcomed the airdrop by the UAE of food parcels into central Gaza. We also noted the resumption of deliveries last week into northern Gaza as well, including through the Vital Lifeline from Jordan with 129 trucks entering northern Gaza last week after an unacceptable slowdown since October 1st, which we've talked about just last week. That number must further increase over the coming week, and we are grateful for Jordan's leadership in organizing these deliveries. We also call on all parties to cooperate in distributing the many hundreds of truckloads now on the Gaza side of the Kerem Shalom crossing. The armed gangs threatening and looting deliveries from this platform are keeping vital supplies away from those in desperate need. And we here in the U.S. are the largest contributor to the humanitarian response in Gaza, and will continue to support all efforts to surge and safeguard assistance and enable its distribution into all areas of Gaza. And one of the things, as I just stated earlier, is that the Secretary is going to speak about, Secretary Blinken, is how do we continue to upsurge the humanitarian assistance into Gaza. So that is going to be a priority, part of his discussions throughout the region as well. Okay, Jared.
The task force, the House task force investigating the Butler, Pennsylvania attempted assassination came out with an interim report today.
Yeah.
Pretty critical of the Secret Service, especially as it relates to the coordination and communication with local police. One, does the White House, the president, have a reaction to that? And two, does the president still have full confidence in the current leadership at Secret Service?
So look, the president has deep respect for the Secret Service, and he knows that they have an extremely difficult job. He knows that the men and women who are part of the Secret Service put their lives on the line day in and day out. And so we're going to review the report. I'm not going to comment on the report right now. We're going to review it. As you just said, it just came out this morning. So, and I would add Secret Service has also acknowledged their own shortcomings. And they have taken several steps to enhance the former president's protection. And so they'll continue to do that work. And the president has also been clear from his point of view as well to the Secret Service to make sure that they provide the highest level of protection for the former president. And so that is what he's asked for. We know that the Secret Service has made some changes, enhancing certainly the protection of the former president. And as it relates to the report, we are going to review it.
Is President Biden confident in his own protection?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a question about Cuba. There have been multiple power outages in the island in recent days. So I was wondering, is the White House monitoring the situation, particularly for signs of unrest? Thank you.
So we are closely monitoring the blackouts on the island, and so we are concerned about the potential humanitarian impacts on the Cuban people. And so, bless you. And like we have seen over the past few years, Cuba's economic conditions stemming from long-term mismanagement of its economic policy and resources has certainly increased the hardship of the people in Cuba. And so, certainly, just want to make clear that this is not, the U.S. is not to blame for the blackouts on the island or the overall energy situation in Cuba. The Cuban government has not requested any assistance at this time, and so we will assess the appropriate next steps if they do request any assistance. And so a critical tenet of the Biden-Harris administration policy as it relates towards Cuba is to always advocate for the support of the Cuban people, and we've been always very clear about that, and so we'll continue.
A follow-up, and I know this is a hypothetical, but if the Cuban government were to request assistance, would the Biden-Harris administration be willing to provide it?
So we're going to, if that were to happen, we certainly would assess the next best steps. They have not. Again, it's a hypothetical, and so we're going to assess what's the next best step to do. Oh, go ahead.
There's a recent report about how a number of Senate Democrats that are running for re-election are having ads that show images of President Trump, touting their own cooperation with President Trump when he was in office. People like Senator Bob Casey saying that he bucked President Biden on fracking and supported President Trump on trade and tariffs. Does the president, as the leader of the Democratic Party, have any thoughts about members of his own party talking about how much they've worked with President Trump in the past?
No.
You all have talked about the former president as a threat to democracy, talked about how much danger he would be if elected once again. The fact that other Senate Democrats aren't having that same message, is that concerning at all?
Look, I'm not going to speak to each individual campaign and what they're doing in their campaign. That's a political, certainly a political campaign and a political reaction to whatever they need to do on the ground. So I'm not going to speak to that. The president stands by his comments, his fight for democracy. He stands by what he saw on January 6th. He stands by the threat to democracy that we saw on that day, a dark day in our democracy, when you saw 2,000 people go to the Capitol because they were told to by the former president, because they didn't believe or were told not to believe free and fair elections, while meanwhile dozens of Republican judges were able to say, hey, yeah, no, this was a free and fair election, and they didn't believe that because they were told not to. And what we saw on that day was horrific. It was horrific, and it was indeed an attack on our democracy. The president has spoken to this many, many times, and so that's who I can speak to. I can speak for the president. I'm not going to speak for other senators and how they decide to move forward with their campaign. Go ahead, in the back.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the upcoming presidential transition. When was the last time that Jeff Simons and the group of people working on the transition met with representatives from both campaigns? And can you provide an update on where you are in getting ready to hand off?
So I don't have any specifics for you at this time. I'm happy to get more information on where they are with that particular piece. I just don't have anything to share on that. As you know, we've offered our assistance to both campaigns as we move forward to a transition at some point, but I just don't have an update on meetings from here.
Thank you.
Good, Naomi, in the back.
Thanks. The president likes to tout his deficit-cutting measures since he's come into office, but last week the Treasury Department actually reported that the deficit grew to $1.8 trillion for fiscal 2024. What's the White House's response to that data?
Well, that's why we've done the work that we have done, especially moving forward with this historic piece of legislation that speaks about how we're going to deal with the deficit, right? When we signed, the president signed, for example, last year, the $1 trillion debt deal that would cut the deficit by $1 trillion. You saw that in other pieces of legislation that he was able to sign and pass through. And that's why we have shown our commitment to dealing with the deficit. And what we're also seeing is what the former administration did. The former administration passed tax cuts for billionaires and corporations that had led to where we are currently with this deficit. And so the president has done the work and will continue to do the work to try and deal with, as you just laid out, the deficit that we're seeing. And look, what we're trying to do here from this administration is make sure that the economy continues to grow, that jobs are available, continue to grow, that we're lowering the unemployment rate and lowering costs. That is something that this president and this vice president are trying to do. Meanwhile, Republicans are doing the opposite. They want to continue to give these tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. They want to make it harder for middle-class families. And so there's a difference there. The contrast could not be more different in what we're trying to do and what the other side is trying to do.
I think this data sort of plays into public perceptions that Democrats are weaker in handling the economy as opposed to Republicans.
But it's not true. And so what we're going to speak to is how we have done the work to turn this economy around. We cannot forget where we were when the president walked into this administration, an economy that was in a downturn. We saw a situation with the pandemic where there was no strategy. Businesses were closing down. Majority of schools were closed. And so this president has been able to turn that around with the help of the vice president. And so this is why we're gonna go to New Hampshire tomorrow. We're gonna speak to the Inflation Reduction Act, what the president and the vice president has been able to do to lower a cost, because we understand that there's more work to do. We understand this is, when you think about healthcare, this is incredibly important. You heard the announcement that we just made on contraception, making sure that we're expanding the ACA because that's important to women. And everything that we're talking about, Republicans in Congress, majority of them, don't want to see. They're on the other side of what we're trying to do. And so, look, we understand there's more work to do, and we're going to continue to push forward. Okay, John.
Thanks a lot, Karine. I wanted to ask you about the vice president and the difficult position that she's in the sense that she's running for president and she is currently vice president. And it's difficult, we've seen in interview after interview, for her to separate herself in terms of public positions from President Biden. Does she have a green light that if she wanted to express a differing point of view than the administration on any topic, foreign or domestic, she could do so? Or is she required to be a loyal vice president to President Biden?
I disagree. I mean, the interviews that I have seen, you've seen an incredibly strong, very clear-eyed vice president and how she sees this country moving forward. And saying that, she has been indeed a partner with this president and in these successes that we have seen from this administration. And I would also note, now this is to the rest of your question, just last week in Philadelphia, the president spoke to you, asking about loyalty, about her cutting her own path. He talked about that. He talked about how, every president has to cut their own path. He talked about how he was loyal to Barack Obama, but then as a president, he was able to cut his own path forward. And so that's what he Kamala's going to do. This is in his own words, what he wants to see the vice president do. And he sees her as being someone who has been loyal, just like he was loyal to Barack Obama, but she is going to certainly cut her own path. And so that's what we're seeing from this vice president. And he's very proud to have seen her move forward in her campaign. And I think what you're seeing is a strong leader, someone who he understood and knew that she would be able to lead on day one.
You say you disagree with the premise of my question.
Yeah, well,
Can
not
I
the
just ask you
premise
something
of the
about
question,
that?
but
May I
you saying
ask you
that.
something about
well,
that?
no, you just said that I disagree with you.
But
I'm
I just
clear-
want to
Yep,
clarify.
Go ahead.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Karine.
yeah.
Can you think of any issue, foreign policy or domestic policy, in which the vice president has a differing point of view than the president? Any daylight between them.
Hold on. Here's what I will say. I will say that they've been critical partners, as I've said many times, and it is true. You've heard that from both of them. And they are partners in the way that this administration has moved forward on many issues, and the issues that they've had to really answer to the American people, because that's what they both care about, is making sure that we deliver for the American people. The question as I heard it, not this one, not this second go around, the first go around, the way that you asked the question was, she has been having a difficulty, if you will, in answering that question. And I have said to you, and I was saying to you, I have not seen that. I've seen a vice president who is running for president, obviously, who has showed strength, leadership, and that's what this president has seen as well. He has said this, and cares about the American people. That's what we have seen. That's what many of the American people want to see. They want to see a fighter, and that's who she is. Okay, Karen.
Thanks, Corinne. Later today, the president's doing the National Arts and Humanities reception. Can you tell us about that event? Who's going to be honored? Who's coming here to the White House?
No, it's a good question. We'll have more to share as we get closer. Obviously, that's about in 3 hours or less. So we'll have more information to share about who's being honored. And you're right, the president's looking forward, and the first lady are looking forward to honoring the attendees today. All right. Okay.
So Tuesday, the countries in BRICS are going to be going to Russia for a meeting. How concerned is the administration that this bloc of countries could undermine U.S. economic or trade strength that we have?
So, look, what we're focused on is on the working with partners around the world, and to build the broadest and deepest coalitions possible to help achieve our shared goals. That's what we're going to be focused on. We're not looking at BRICS as an evolving into some kind of geopolitical rival. That's not how we look at it, to the United States or anyone else. And so we're going to continue to work with our relationships, our partnerships, whether it's with Brazil, India, South Africa. And so we're going to continue to manage certainly those relationships and with China, for example. And so that's going to be our focus right now.
One of the newest members of BRICS is the United Arab Emirates, and on September 23rd, the administration signed a deal with them to develop new AI technologies. How concerned then is the Biden administration that what we give to the UAE will then end up in Russia, China, or Iran's hands through the BRICS agreements?
So we've worked extensively with UAE on advanced technology. That is something that we have done, and we've done that for the last 2 years. And so that partnering is moving forward. And we believe it's moving forward in the right direction. So we recognize, and this is why the president did an executive action, took an executive action on AI. We recognize the potential good, right, of AI, and look forward to certainly furthering that and solidifying our collaboration in AI as we try to build the safeguards and protections. Again, that's why we did the EO, an executive action on it.
But the transfer of technology, I'm concerned about through the BRICS agreement, that the transfer of technology will happen.
So look, again, we've worked extensively, really, truly extensively with the UAE, and we are, I think where we're headed, the movement, how we're moving forward, is in a good place. And so this is a conversation that we've had over the last 2 years. And so we're going to continue to have those conversations. We're going to continue to work through this. And so we believe it's moving in the right direction. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Corinne.